Hi. So this is Professor Brennan again, and we're going to talk about communication anxiety. And I had you read that article by Bodie called A Rattling Heart, Rattling Knees, Ruminated Thoughts, Defining, Explaining, and Treating Public Speaking Anxiety. And we're going to talk about that today. And honestly, it's an uncomfortable topic for people, right? I mean, if you think about it, if you have any anxiety about public speaking, you don't really want to admit it because, I don't know, I don't have any trouble admitting it now because I've kind of overcome it. And I'm going to tell you a little story about that. But I know in general, when I did have it, I didn't want to talk about it, right? Someone wanted me to give a speech or go up in front of people. I was like, no, I don't want to do that. And I didn't want to talk about why I didn't want to do it, right? I want to talk about how it made me feel. I just wanted to avoid it completely. So that's kind of what I want to spend a little time discussing because you need to know that y'all are in the same boat. Okay, what you're going through and what you feel inside about the fear and the anxiety and the heart palpitations and feeling like you can't breathe and your stomach feeling like you're gonna like vomit or have the other thing happen to you. um, all that's normal. And what's great about this article is it's talking about all that stuff. It's talking about physically what happens to you. How do you feel about it, right? It talks about in this article state and trait, whether people have, or it's a psychological thing, or it's just in specific instances where they feel this communication anxiety. And before I get into the details of this, of why I'm having you read this, let me give you a little background about myself. So my major, my undergrad, as well as my graduate degree is in communication. And when I went to undergrad, I went to San Francisco State University. And when I went there, I had no intention on being a communication major. Okay. I had no intention on studying that, didn't have any interest in that. In fact, I thought I was going to be a psychologist. And so I studied that, and I wasn't really interested. And then I was in college. I was in my fourth year of college. Now, this is a 4-year university, and I was in my fourth year. And I still didn't know what I was doing. And I had to finally take that public speaking class. In those days, this was the 80s, okay, a long time ago. In those days, the only communication class you had to take was the public speaking class. We didn't have options. There was no group communication or interpersonal communication or argumentation or anything like that. We had to take public speaking was required. You couldn't get out of it. So in my fourth year of college, I took that public speaking class, and it was really nerve-wracking at first. It made me sick to go to class. I didn't want to go to class. Thank God I liked the teacher. I can remember the teacher. In fact, he was a graduate student at San Francisco State, and I think his name was Steve. And he was tough. He was like not a nice teacher, but kind of nice, like understanding. But what I remember about him, or about that class, is it took me by the third speech, and I think this is the speech that I really wanted to get out of. I was like, I'd had it. I really wanted to quit. The third speech was probably an informative speech. I got up there, and something inside me changed. It was the first time I felt the power of my own voice and my own words. Now, I was the person that, you know, stopped raising her hand in class when I got older because I didn't want to have the wrong answer, or I didn't want to be singled out, or I didn't want to be embarrassed. I grew up at a home where I was criticized heavily. And I firmly believe if you're criticized a lot as a kid, you're going to shut down. And I was kind of a silent kid. And so I'm in that class and I'm doing this speech, and I'm kind of having this like whole, I'm using the word loosely, kind of spiritual experience, right? I'm like, wow, I kind of like this. I kind of like I'm like saying something and everyone's listening to me. And I felt for the first time like really empowered. Now that was the beginning of a change in how I approached my life. And this is one of the reasons why I like to teach this class, is because I believe that the power of our voice, this in East Indian philosophy, I believe this is the fifth chakra, okay? our power of our expression. I believe that the power of our voice has the power to change everything. I believe that. I believe in people who do public speaking, and if you look at the people that have created change in the world, they've been great public speakers. I mean, we're talking social change, and that's kind of what I'm interested in. So I took that class and I became a communication major because of that class. I loved learning about communication, and I have loved communication ever since. And today I can get in front of people, and it depends. If I'm in front of my peers, I'll be nervous. If I'm in front of people that I don't know, less nervous. Usually people that I know, I'm more nervous. But it's taken a while to develop confidence, and I believe that the older you get, the more you don't care about what people think. And those are all the things that happen, right? You're worried about people, what they're going to think of you. Will they like you? Will you be stupid? Will you like burp? Will you fart? Will you fall down? Will you sweat? Will they see your sweaty armpits? You know, all these things that you worry about, right? I'm going to tell you a little story in addition to the story I just told you, okay? I've never seen anyone pass out during a speech. Never. I've seen a student leave the class and have to throw up. That's happened to one student. I've seen another student have a anxiety attack, a panic attack. And we worked through that, and the class was so considerate of her. Okay, so I've seen a lot of different things, but no one died. And here's the other thing that happens. Now, this is going to be an online course, so you're going to get feedback on your speeches, right? But you still got to put yourself out there, and you kind of like don't have control over. You have control over how you're seeing it because you can record your speech as much as you want, right? But you don't really know. You're putting yourself out there, and you don't know how they're going to take it until like they give you some feedback, and then you go, "Oh, okay." You know, this happens for a teacher too. We're in the same boat. So you are missing that part of that immediate feedback from your audience, right? Being in an online class. But you're going to get the feedback of people giving you positive feedback and letting them know how you made them feel. And, you know, as I said in the previous lecture about communication, our ability to express ourselves is about our power as human beings. And my work with you, I see my work with you, is to empower you to be all that you can be, right? And if you are experiencing public speaking anxiety as in a way that it's an obstacle for you getting past, you know, this class or doing speeches out there, or, you know, maybe we're in a really intense time in society right now, right? Maybe you want to get out there and be part of the protest and you want to say something. Well, maybe this class can help you be better at saying what you want to say, okay? Or give you the courage to say it, right? I mean, so. Let's look at this article. So this article really looks at in depth. It's what we call a literature review, right? They're taking literature from all different kinds of places of how they've studied this. There's a whole bunch of people that study communication anxiety. So those of you who have it, it's normal. Okay, it's a normal thing. Don't think that you have something weird. You're going to discover when you get to the discussion board that a whole bunch of people have it, and it's cool. Okay, it's normal. And it may not go away completely, but you will learn how to manage it. There are ways to manage it, and that's kind of what I really want to get to in this article, the more important part of it, but let's just have an understanding. So communication anxiety and public speaking anxiety is a fear of giving a speech. And there's literature that looks at kind of people's fears like before the speech, right before the speech, during the speech, and after the speech. And if you have really bad anxiety, your anxiety never goes down. Okay? Like for me, I'll have anxiety before the speech. What I have said before is I am I do wolf advocacy, so I do public speaking. And always when I'm up there to go give a talk, I'm thinking, why the heck did I do this? This is the stupidest thing. Why am I doing this? Because I'm so nervous. And the nervous part is what makes you uncomfortable, right? And you don't want to do it. Who wants to be uncomfortable? Nobody wants to be uncomfortable, but you're not going to die from it. You can try to learn how to use that energy, that discomfort, that anxious energy to your benefit, and let that motivate you. So you're not flat. So you have some energy when you're giving, you're delivering your speech. So that's what this article talks about. It does a good job at talking about state versus trait. If you have trait anxiety, that's something that's ongoing. You're the person who's going to give the speech and you're anxious throughout the speech. It never goes away. If you have state, oftentimes it means that you'll have only communication anxiety in certain situations, or public speaking anxiety. And I'm going to use those interchangeably. Now, what I think is really cool about this article, and I'm going to get to that part because I think it's the most important part, is how do you treat it? On page 86, okay, on this article, they talk about all kinds of treatment. Being in this class is one of the ways, called skills training, is one of the ways you can treat this particular issue if you have public speaking anxiety, right? Doing the practice, doing it over and over and over again. That's what happened to me. That's how I treated it. Not because I'm like misconfident about everything. Age helps, but it really has to do with the practice, and the practice creates confidence and trust in yourself. Really, I know, maybe, I don't know. I'm going to assume that maybe some of you think it's about how other people respond to you, but it's really about yourself. This is about your relationship with yourself when it comes to anxiety. So you learning how to trust yourself. Part of the way to trust yourself in skills training is preparing and practicing. Those of you that are involved in any theater training or done any acting, or even in sports, right? Before you go to a game, you guys have practice, practice, practice. You know, you can't just show up and be a good basketball player, right? You got to practice. Well, the same goes with public speaking. Public speakers that are really good at it, they practiced over and over and over again their speech, because there's different ways we can say the speech depending on the audience. And we want the speech to become part of us, right? You kind of have a body memory the more you practice your speech. Those of you that are in theater, have theatrical training, know what I'm talking about. So there's skills training. There's also what we call cognitive modification. Okay, so cognitive modification is like, how can you retrain your mind to think about it differently? But it can also be, how can you create positive, like, how do you create, I always like to use the word affirmations, which I know sounds kind of funky and maybe too like hippy dippy or something, and I don't mean it that way. Those of you that ever use affirmations, they work. They actually work. But it's about retraining your mind to be positive. But you have to know how you go into it in the first place. I want you to think about when you're giving a speech or when you have to give some kind of performance, what's going on in your head. The truth is, what's going on in your head, you have some control over, right? You can't control the speed of your thoughts and all that, but you have some control over how you decide. You can decide to work with that. And really, it's a decision to either think positive or negative. It's your decision. Now, I'm not saying delude yourself by saying, I'm going to do great on the speech, but I didn't practice and I'm not prepared, but I'm going to do great anyway. That's like lying to yourself. I'm not saying lie to yourself. I'm saying you've done the work, you've done the practice. Think about this, those of you that are into sports. You've done all this work, you've practiced, you've worked out. You're ready. Okay? Those are the things that you want to tell yourself when you're getting ready to deliver your speech. You practice and practice, practice, right? And there's a level of respect that goes into public speaking as well, is you want to do your best because you respect your audience to give your best. So cognitive modification, changing how you think about things. You can do this through affirmations. You can do this by positive thinking and positive thoughts, saying them out loud. It works, people. It totally works. There's ways that you can redo that. They have a thing called calm therapy, and it's capital COM. And what this therapy, what they're suggesting really is trying to look at public speaking as just a communication event. If you're the type of person that's really performance driven and you think of everything about achievement, this can, and I have this thing actually, I have this thing when I want to do creative pursuits. I can be too achievement oriented and it will stop me from doing them. So if you can tell that part of yourself, if you're really performance driven, that can actually stop you from even trying. Okay. So the idea is to try to begin to treat public speaking as just a communication event in which you're sharing information or trying to argue a side about something. When we get to persuasive speaking, you'll understand what I mean, right? To take a different approach to it that may bring down, because being performance driven brings up the anxiety, which can keep you from functioning, right? Because this is really about looking at how our anxiety keeps us from functioning and getting what we want done. Okay, moving on. I don't want to keep you too long. So visualization. Visualize how everything's going to go before you do it, right? Sports people do this as well, right? You've learned this. This is not new stuff. So you can visualize how you want it all to go. What does it look like? How are the people responding? How did you do? What does your voice sound like? What's the situation? What's the room look like? Right? You can visualize all of that. And when we visualize, we kind of set our brains up to act as if that's exactly what's going to happen. So it's kind of that kind of thing like affirmations. But when we visualize something, we really spend the time visualizing all the pieces of it. You know, have you ever heard of a vision board? Right? It's the idea of that visualizing, we set ourselves up to start to think and believe that that's exactly how things are going to progress. That can help you eliminate anxiety as well. Okay. Okay, last thing I want to talk about, performance feedback. You're going to get this in class. You're going to get it from me. Performance feedback is valuable. It lets you know, right? When I talked about communication, it's a driver of all relationships, right? It's this transactional event where we're communicating with each other. I say something, you listen, you say something, I listen, back and forth. Even when you're listening, you're still communicating with me. When I'm listening, I'm still communicating with you. There's communication going on all the time. Performance feedback is a way to say, hey, I got what you meant, or I understood what you're saying, or your delivery was really good. It's a way to give positive feedback. And the way I actually run peer critique in general, we're not going to do that in your first speech, but your second and third speech, you'll be doing peer critiques where you'll give feedback. You'll focus on two things the speaker did well, and then you will focus on one area for growth. Okay? Performance feedback is good. It helps you grow as a person. So I want to end this with, I'm in this with you. Okay? Communication anxiety is a scary thing. It's uncomfortable. It makes us sick. We don't like feeling uncomfortable. We rather be like zenned out and blissed out and happy. I get that. So maybe we can just kind of turn that a little and see it a little bit different way and go, hey, this is going to be exciting. How am I going to grow as a person in this class? And I get to use my voice so people get to know me and I get to express me and see what I'm about. And so I want to encourage you to take all the risks you want in this class, within ethical parameters, but to risk and see what you're made of. Let's do this because I'm in it and I got your back. Okay, I'll see you next time.